I'm not sure I did. Let's make sure of that. Oh, yes, I already did. Okay, roll call. Jeannie?
Commissioner Lesniak?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington?
Here.
Commissioner Wade?
Here.
Chairperson Kroc?
Here.
Just to note, all commissioners are present.
Okay, orders of the day. Are there any?
Everything's in order.
Okay. Public comment. If anyone in the audience has anything to talk about that is not on the agenda, you're welcome to come up and speak for 3 minutes. Okay. Public comment is over. Approval of the minutes from the September 5th meeting. I found them in order. I don't know what anybody else.
I'd move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Public hearings. 15477 Oak Lane. The applicant requests approval of a site development permit for a total of 119.5 square feet of additions and the modification of the roof design for an existing single-story home. The proposal is in conjunction with the full interior and exterior remodel of the home, including window and finished material upgrades. Jeannie, would you like to
Yeah, so
tell us about that?
as you can see, the primary reason this is before you is the change in the roof design from a basic gable with some, I don't know what you call them, little front gables to a basic hip roof and a front entry. They are kind of squaring off the home where there are some existing bay windows. That's where you get the additional square footage, but that's pretty minor. Had they not changed the roof, it would have gone straight to building permit. But I think, as you can see with the plans, it's a good update and modification to the home. I did have one set of neighbors come in and look at the plans, and they seemed very pleased with what was being proposed and had no comments relative to it, except that, oh, it looks nice. So with that, I'm available for any questions. And we do have the large set here that has some color renderings in it that are not in the reduced scale.
And we don't need a materials board for this?
No, that's only for brand new construction that the material boards are required.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Jeannie?
I do not.
Okay.
Nope.
If there is someone in the audience, why am I calling it an audience? What is it supposed to be called?
More than one.
Because they're participants. If there are any participants from the meeting who would like to speak about this project, please come up, state your name.
My name is Mehran Soltanzadeh. I'm a designer for this project. So as you notice, we have interior remodeling, and there is no site modification or any tree removal proposed. This property has really nice oak trees, and this is the main reason that the owner purchased this property recently, is just because of the really, really nice trees. So the main concept of this improvement is to keep all the trees. As you see, we keep the existing tree over the deck. And we have difficulties with the existing roof condition because it's kind of designed really awkward. The intention of this improvement is raise the ceiling as per desire of my clients, and we have a difficulty because of half of the existing building. It was designed with a truss system, so we were not be able to increase. So we decided to hold the demo the roof and increase the top plate like 2 foot. But the new design of the roof is still below the, existing roof top ridge, and there's no actually kind of negative impact on the neighbors or such a this thing. And mostly we upgrade the finishes and the materials from the exterior, including the windows and entry.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Nope.
So the new roof is actually lower than the
Lower.
existing roof?
Correct.
Okay.
By 1 foot.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. You
Thanks,
may
Mira.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Discussion.
You have to close the public
Oh,
hearing.
close the public hearing. And go back to discussion.
Outside of the fact that the pages were all upside down and inside out, I think the house looks very nice.
I would concur with that sentiment.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Yeah,
I
nice
know the
improvement.
people who lived there, I think, an owner ago. So I've spent a lot of time in that house. It's a good feeling. It's a very nice house. It's a beautiful location too. So, do you have anything else to say?
Nope.
Does anyone want to make
I move
You're
that
looking at
we-
me like I'm doing
No,
something.
you're not.
Sorry.
I move that we accept the plan as stated and move forward.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is passed unanimously.
Okay, we're going to set a record tonight.
Well, no, we've got the tree thing.
You're going to talk trees?
We've got to talk trees.
Yeah, that could go all night.
Okay,
So you're set.
you're set.
Well done. Thanks for
Very
coming
much.
tonight. Sorry to
Thank you.
take up
tree
7
out,
minutes of your
yeah.
time. Your commute was probably longer than the
In
meeting.
the meeting.
All right, good luck with your project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It really is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
The whole look
this
of
is a total no-brainer. Yeah,
It is, yeah.
It really is.
Okay, now on to new business. Discussion of proposed modification to the tree preservation regulations as directed by the city council.
So,
Amy,
back in March, because a council person requested it, we took to them kind of a discussion about the existing tree removal controls and what other cities did, and because there was an interest in primarily allowing eucalyptus to be just taken out without any review or approval. But it kind of garnered more discussion, and the council directed staff to come back with an ordinance for their consideration that did a number of things, and I listed them here, and it was specific to eliminating the cap of a maximum of 3 tree removals per property per year as a measure of significance, because currently the measures of significance in Monte Sereno's tree preservation ordinance are if it's an oak or a redwood, if measured 48 inches above grade, the circumference is 20 inches or greater. That's considered a significant tree and you need a permit to remove it. If it's any other tree, again, 48 inches above grade, if it's 25 inches or greater, then you need a permit to remove it. Third threshold is, regardless of species or size, 3 or more trees per year. So you could be 3 little orange trees or whatever. Who knows if people bring all of those in, but it's kind of one of those thresholds that, not really sure if it's happening, and it seems a little onerous. And having gone through other communities' tree preservation regulations, we were kind of the only one who had that. So the council,
The 3-1,
this restrictive,
yeah, any 3
arbitrary
of any type,
3,
yeah,
boom.
yeah.
like even like little tiny, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Saplings, you're talking about
Where
saplings?
it says any
Any
tree,
tree,
so
yeah.
anything that's
Well-
classified as a tree regardless of size.
So, and also to include a list of trees that the city would consider undesirable for the area and modify the regulations related to the removal of those. So if it's considered an undesirable tree, either by species or location or whatever, that you could go through a much quicker process to get it removed. There are other communities that have lists. And I attached the same information that I had presented to them. So you can see that there are some communities like Los Gatos or Saratoga that identify trees that are exempt from a permit. Acacia, tree of heaven, it's ailanthus, some palm trees, some, couple eucalyptus, tulip trees because they tend to get aphids and just real sickly and can spread, stuff like that. Some include liquid amber, so they didn't tell us what trees to put in. I was kind of looking at other lists, and I'll have my own recommendation, but I think one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this same information to you all is because you see and you're charged with reviewing the tree removal permit requests that are go beyond a diseased or a dangerous tree. So I wanted to see if you either concurred or had your own thoughts relative to other modifications that you think might be worthy of the council's consideration. At this point, we are putting together an ordinance that deals with the things that they asked for, eliminating that tree, the putting together a list of undesirable trees, dealing with an increase in the penalties. I mean, that's more through the enforcement admin citation process. I think right now, if the city did issue a citation, which they very rarely do, we usually just force people to come in and get a permit and require replacement. Right now, the amount for that penalty or that citation is $100. So we propose to double that. One council person wanted us to clarify the appeal process. Pretty clear, but I'll do what I can to make it clear. I mean, if it's laid out in the ordinance that, you appeal to council and, all the various steps. But, we're going to relook at the language to see if there's, a little bit we can do to make it clearer or where the lack of clarity is. And then they also want us to kind of set some policy related to the standards for tree removal, ensuring proper removal by professionals. So that's separate from the ordinance, and it may, I'm thinking I actually need more discussion on that, and that what are you thinking? Do you want to force people to, take the stump out or grind it down so it's not visible? Do you want to make sure that licensed tree professionals do it, or, what is the real issue there? And then we'd have to work, with the attorneys or our attorney to make sure that whatever policy we're setting forth is reasonable.
Are you talking about changing that for the trees that we take out of that are under the threshold, or the undesirable trees?
I think it might just be a general policy that if anybody's doing tree removal, whether it was subject to a tree removal permit or not. For example, if we do change the regulations to allow for people to remove a eucalyptus tree without any permit or any review by staff, they're going to be removing that tree. So what would the city expect if they're going to be doing this work on their private property? Do you just cut it off at 2 feet above and be done? Or if you're going to go through a tree removal, what are we going to expect as far as the professionals doing that to make sure that adjacent properties are protected or other trees on the property are protected, things like that. Okay. That's what I'm thinking they're talking about. But again, how do we, the city of Saratoga has something kind of like that. Most communities don't codify that. It's more in a policy.
But not down in the
municipal
process.
code, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we have kind of a general policy that if you take one tree out, you're going to have to put 2 back in? There's some mathematical issue that...
Yeah, generally, I mean, and that's not even codified because sometimes, there are places where it's, there's an overabundance of trees.
Right, and we've
yeah.
done it in the past where we haven't required people
Yeah,
to do
so
trees
it's-
because it's like a forest
yeah.
there to begin with.
Right.
It's not a
And this
feudal
city
town.
doesn't have a lot of public right-of-ways, so an alternative isn't, well, if you can't plant it on your site, you can plant it on,
Right.
public property or whatever, or, donate to our city forest, which in some communities, it plays a big role. But again, in this community, since there aren't I don't think it's as prominent in this community. So generally, it's a 1-to-1, and there are very few cases that I see that, because I can approve some if it's dead, because then we would constitute it a hazard. And I might require 1-to-1. Maybe it's a 24-inch, maybe it's a 15. I kind of assess the situation. There are some instances where I haven't required because it's a forested,
Right.
it's a really forested property. Or there are some properties that sometimes the trees that they're removing is really because they're doing good forestry practices. And you have to remove some so that the others can flourish and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's kind of a judgment call, and I do the best I can, given the fact that I'm just a planner, but I've been unfortunately dealing with trees for 30 years.
Right.
So I have some sense, but, if ever in
Decides if
doubt,
it's-
I require 1-to-1 at
Who
minimum.
decides if it's a dead tree? Is that like an arborist
Well,
certifying it? Or
one of the things that I'm going to propose to do is include definitions in our regulations. We don't have any definitions.
Copper nail in it, does it?
Well, and there are some that it leaves the ability of the director or the city planner or city manager to require an arborist report to ensure that there truly is no viable life in that tree. If there are trees that are deciduous, well, clearly, if you're going to come in and say it's dead in the winter, you're not going to get approved. So there are.
Looks dead.
any leaves?
Push it.
So they gave us direction. I have some ideas of, at the minimum, to put in a definition of what is a tree. We don't even define what a tree is.
Right.
Then have dead tree and unsuitable tree at the minimum. And then, who knows, they may see those definitions and decide that we need to define a few things more. Tree, when you define a tree, that's when you also talk about, well, what, in the case of multi-trunk, or where we have the size, well, what if I have a multi-trunk? Well, then we'll modify that, and we'll put language and say that there are some communities that said if it's a multi-trunk tree within that first 48 inches,
You have to count
it's
all of them.
all of them. Some just do that. So again, there's a couple ways. San Jose did the whole thing. Others do, you add up the size of each of the trunks. But Monte Sereno's size is pretty small as it is. It captures a lot of trees regardless.
Yeah.
So,
And Monte Sereno uses circumference.
which,
Everybody else uses
Yeah,
diameter.
diameter makes so much more sense.
yeah, except
harder
how
to
do you
measure.
measure the diameter? I will be honest.
You measure the circumference.
And then you divide by
3.14.
3.14, yeah.
So the engineers are going to get this, okay.
The question, why does it matter? if
But
it's
most people,
diameter or
the most
circumference?
I don't
most
know.
people who submit
It just
these,
helps you understand. It's hard to, I think, to relate to, a
Somebody-
40-inch circumference tree, but
a
if you,
homeowner can take a string and wrap it around there and then measure the string. They can't do the other thing. And most of these are submitted by,
and we have to spell it
Yeah.
out, the formula.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, come on, I don't really remember my high school geometry,
So,
so.
The diameter is easier to kind of estimate visually.
but
by
there
just
are
looking
there are
at
a
it.
lot of if it's a perfect circle tree, but there are a lot of ordinances that do work under circumference.
I think as long as we're doing other stuff, let's just leave the stuff that doesn't matter alone. If it's been circumference, I would say just let
Good
sleeping
to me.
dogs lie.
Yeah.
And it is. I would say probably 70% of the communities use circumference. Some use diameter. Some
Well, let's just
The-
not
the
even
tree community
bother
will-
talking about that, because
will
there are other
say
things
measured
that-
they'll say diameter at breast height, DBH. Okay, well, what is breast height?
Whose breast?
Yeah. I'm sure.
That's why,
That's just a funny
We're
one. I
not
read
going
that, I
there.
thought,
still do
We're
it,
not going there.
but it does translate to a certain, but that's just the nomenclature they use. So that's why, some will be 48 inches above grade, some will be, 36 inches,
I
it's
kind of like
whatever.
putting a number on it rather than a nebulous.
So this exemption that says to trees deemed no longer viable by the city manager or the city manager's designee, what's viable mean?
That you can't bring it back to life.
That's dead,
basically.
basically.
Nearly.
Yeah. Or if it's
Dead
been,
enough.
if it's been pruned to a point where it's not gonna come back. I mean, you can,
This doesn't relate to particular species of trees, but rather the health of the actual tree. Okay.
Which probably should be spelled out. I mean,
That's not clear.
yeah, as an attorney, doesn't that bug you?
This, the only thing I saw was ambiguous.
So I have another question. So my personal pet peeve.
so that's why I'm throwing in a definition of dead tree. Because there are some definitions that talk about, it's been determined to be in such a state by a certified arborist during a non-dormant or other natural stage of the tree that would minimize the likelihood that the tree would be mistakenly identified as being in such a dead state, or that there's insufficient amount of live tissue. I mean, you kind of go into that, and it's really using from the arborists, what do they consider dead? Oak trees are in a perpetual state of dying. And the older they are, the more craggy they are, but they're closer to death when
We're
they're
all
like
that way.
that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like us too.
Sounds like me.
You're kind of bumming me out here.
So that's kind of why you have to, and sometimes people say, oh, but it's got some brown leaves. Well, yeah, but trim it up and
I got
it'll
some
come back to
gray hair.
life. It's not dead, it's just you haven't taken care of it.
Right, right.
So that's when you would say, I need an arborist report. And that's where the arborist would say, well, it really has sufficient live tissue. It just needs to be trimmed. Because even when you have those, a lot of stuff on a trees, all of that is pulling the
nutrients.
energy. Yeah. So you have to trim it up, clear it out, and then it'll flourish more. Kind of like us, too. No. So I'm going to be throwing in a few what I think key definitions. And I don't know if you guys had any thoughts of the types of trees that you may think, are reasonable.
To exempt?
Yeah. Which we still may require them to come in to have us almost certify that, that is a blue gum. Because
That's what I
Yeah.
put here is we don't want to just seed everything and okay, you can do what you want. And if it's bigger than this, then talk to us. I think it's important to keep, control isn't the right word, but to keep
our hand in
our
it.
hands in the process, and whether, like in the thing proposed, maybe a lesser amount. What does a tree removal permit cost?
Nothing. Unless
Oh,
it comes to you guys, it's $100.
So my
Okay, well
question
then-
is, the penalty is just $100?
Up that thing.
So do you know other
But they'll
cities like
pay
San
it.
Mateo, you have to put up a tree bond and it's like $18,000. It's
really?
big time. Because there's no penalty. We've had in the past where a developer will come into a large lot and they go in and
And clear cut.
what incentive for $100 when you can just do
Right.
whatever you want?
Cost them $1,000 and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, I would.
So I think the penalty needs to be larger, and I
Substantially
think there
larger.
should be some verbiage from the city attorney, you tell me, because you're the expert on the law part of it, that, if they're using a professional, their license should be in jeopardy if they're gonna take a tree out without a permit.
Yeah, we don't have the mechanism by which to strip somebody of their license,
Yeah.
but
No, but they can register
There
a
is
complaint.
penalty language in our ordinance now. I'm not sure that my understanding is that, again, I've only been around, and so I don't know what the history is, but we don't take advantage of that as we should.
we should. I think we should.
So I think it may be that there is some mechanism. The trees, since I've been here, 2 years, the trees that have been taken out, which I think were, they knew darn well what they were doing because they were required by a site development permit to retain them. Probably more so because of the neighbors. It's not like they were the nicest trees, but the new owners come in to this house, and they don't like the tree because it's an acacia, which is an invasive species, and they take it out. Well, what do you do after the fact? You make them come in for a tree removal permit, charge them double fees, which in this case may be $200. Do you also fine them the $200? I mean, it's one of those things.
Yeah,
which,
and then how do you enforce it? And
Is it going to cost us more to enforce it than to just work with them and, get them to, I think that's kind of been the direction that the city has worked with in some of these, what I call the basic cases, not what you're talking about. I haven't been party to
no,
those.
we had a lot over on
Is it Viewfield?
Viewfield, where they went in and took out and ground stuff up, and they tried to hide it all, and it was oak trees.
Yeah.
Well, I think if people are aware that there's a severe penalty, they're less likely to do it. So that's why, I mean, if it's a $200,
Oh, yeah, if
Penalty.
you're a contractor or you totally
who
just
cares?
do
Around
it.
here with the
the cost of doing
multi-million-dollar
business.
homes,
Yeah.
$1,000 a tree too much?
No.
no.
That seem right?
In addition to coming before you to get a.
You come before us
after the
and
fact.
we tell you how many more trees you're going to now
Yeah.
replace that tree with.
Yeah, because I.
And they should have an opportunity, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they should have an opportunity to say, hey, I shouldn't be fined $1,000, here's the scoop. I mean, I want to give an opportunity for people to be heard.
Right.
Maybe there were extenuating circumstances warranting removal of that tree on an expedited basis for some reason. But I think if you create a hearing opportunity, a stiff penalty, and the opportunity to present yourself before this commission to be told what you're going to do, what we're going to require of you to replace that tree, that would be pretty fair to anything.
Yeah, and they get red tagged if they're under construction.
Does
Ooh, Heather, you're,
this
No, I
memorandum
just think it's
have-
really
have,
unfair.
no, it is. It is, I
anything to
agree.
do with the fact that an established home next to another established home, and there's this one great big limb that's leaning
Yeah, I
over
have that
the
in my
edge?
house.
Yes.
Yes, so do I.
Is there anything that says, there's got to be some law?
That's-
You can
The
cut.
law is you can
That's
cut
neighbor law.
straight up
Anything
the
from
boundary
in your
line, so long
property.
as you
So I
don't
can
harm
go
the
out
tree.
and cut it off at the boundary line?
Yeah,
But
I'll remember that.
not to, but again,
cut it early.
there is a limit that if you do that and it's going to cause some instability or harm,
To the tree.
then you may not be able to do that. So that's a whole other realm of neighbor law that,
It's in another.
basically, yeah, you can prune up your property line into the air. However, you have to understand what the implications may be to the overall health of the tree or the stability and the safety of the other property owners.
I can
And
understand
I don't
this.
get into that when people come in. I just basically hand them that.
I don't want to belabor this,
Yeah.
but I don't mind taking responsibility for pruning my tree. But when my neighbors got things, and I got my grandkids visiting me,
Yeah.
I get a little nervous because
Oh, I go to the neighbor and I usually have the, tree guy that's trimming my trees, that's gonna cut this one, sit with her and talk to her, and he usually earns more than
yeah, that's
Should.
probably
sitting with her for about an hour talking about it. And then we get through it. It's every couple of years, it's not a big deal.
Okay, so where,
So our ordinance doesn't really deal with that.
Okay.
That's in a separate area of the law.
Well, do we want to identify any trees that we find to be just a menace and something that over which a permit wouldn't be
Well,
warranted?
I'd like to add onto the list, so if you look at all the trees over the, our little list of what get taken out in a year, pine trees, to me, shouldn't have to go through design review to be taken out. Especially because they get old and gnarly and start falling apart, and
Sappy.
they're not my favorite tree.
do you want, or do you mean to take them out of the process entirely, or just have
Well,
them
I'd love to
in-house?
Identify them as unsuitable.
Yeah,
the redwood tree considered a pine tree.
no.
No.
These
The
would be at the-
sappy, ones with the little straight needles that
That's
are about that long.
Yeah, the plan is to create a list of undesirable trees, right? So you include
I
pine
would
tree in
like
that?
to include pine.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like to go that far.
All sorts
I
of
like
pines or
eucalyptus
just,
trees.
I do
I
too.
personally like them. I know they're not a lot of people are big fan, but they're very shallow rooted.
They're trash
and they're
trees.
dangerous.
They're
They're dangerous trees if you don't keep them maintained.
Right.
So if you let them grow out of control, they do pose risks.
Well, it's a fire risk
It's a
too. I
fire
know.
risk. I would say eucalyptus are unsuitable.
But I know on the city of Los Gatos, they seem to identify blue gum eucalyptus, red gum
Yeah, they have blue gum,
eucalyptus.
because there
I
are
couldn't
other
tell you
sorts of
anything about
eucalyptus that are used in, like residential plantings, multifamily, that are not those, they're not
It's that little
self-shedding.
silver dollar one.
Yeah, the round ones,
Yeah, and
yeah.
there's also red bark eucalyptus, which is different than red gum, which is a beautiful tree, and they get little puffy
Little
flower
seed pods,
things.
yeah.
I've seen those, yeah, those are pretty.
But they
So
get
they can
huge
be
too, though.
aromatic. They tend
You
not
can
to
plant a
grow.
eucalyptus tree on your property if you like. No one's stopping you
Yeah.
from putting eucalyptus in. It's just,
If you buy a place, then it's got,
well, we've seen it over and over again where people have come to remove huge eucalyptus trees because they get fearful in the wind that the tree's going to go down, and they tend to take over.
So I looked up both those species, and both of them, because I had never really heard of red eucalyptus, and it has a similar growing pattern, and is
Set of risks.
yeah,
Yeah.
with limbs falling and self shedding and stuff like that.
What is tree of heaven?
That's a tree grows in Brooklyn. That was that tree. It's a ailanthus. You'll see it all over downtown San Jose. It pops up
Okay.
in the sidewalks and
Okay.
cracks of everything.
Should it be on the list?
Yes. I don't know as though there are that many
Well, I'm all for the
here.
palm tree. There's nothing
But-
like a 60-foot tall, like that
And
one at
privets
Baird's
are-
old house.
Aren't privets really, I mean,
Privets are
Privets
are
are hedges
shrubs that are grown out of
and
control,
birds
right?
Yeah.
spread them,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
So
an
I agree on
overgrown
all
shrub.
those.
So, well, let me just say this, then, does anybody have any objection to adopting the same trees at Los Gatos effectively as identified as?
Can we add
exempt
pine?
from their process to keep things simple?
Yeah, I agree, 'cause really we should be Los Gatos.
Yeah,
use that and
just to
then
be
add.
consistent,
add
yeah, I
pine.
think so.
I don't think as Saratoga has, I don't think there should be a unique permit given to trim more than 25% of a tree's canopy. I think
That's super
people,
arbitrary.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
who's gonna
trimming is
decide what
trimming, and
25%?
once you hire a bed trimmer, you'll know you'll never hire them again, but
Yeah,
I don't want to get into the trimming.
Yeah.
But I will identify trees akin to those that are reflected in Los Gatos' ordinance, and
But, and Los Gatos limits it to trees that are 24-inch
Right.
in diameter or less. So if it's a big, giant one of these undesirable trees, you just have to get a
still
permit.
coming back, yeah.
Yeah,
That works for me.
yeah, that works for me too.
And I think the language about what constitutes a viable or dying tree would be helpful as well,
Yeah.
right?
I have a couple definitions to put what it is. And again, my thought is, even if it is dead or unsuitable or one of those that are exempt, you still have to come in for a permit. It's administrative over the counter just for us to
Yeah,
ensure that
to
it is in fact
monitor.
one of the undesirable, and it is in fact dead.
Got
Do
it.
you guys go out and actually look at the tree?
I go out and look at every tree.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
I like that.
Take
That's
pictures of
what I
those
want.
trees.
Yeah,
So then, are we gonna also put something in, like, there's this thing with San Jose on a single-family lot located within 5 feet of residence or underground utility? Or it should be, I've got a redwood that at some point it's on my property line, the fence is like through it, and that thing's taken over the world, and eventually it's gonna have to go.
You know,
And
we
it's-
talked about that. We still have the provision that,
hazardous, dangerous to life or property.
and so that's what
So
we
would count,
use to
okay.
do that.
So it's
Otherwise,
covered.
Yeah.
you may have people taking out redwoods and oaks ad nauseum, and I don't think we want that.
We won't
Right.
preserve those trees.
San Jose, we put that in because that was more related to the standard subdivisions and people's trees growing into their sewer lines and the roots and all of that stuff that, we're not going to make you go through a public hearing to do that. We were doing everything to get trees out of the public hearing process because it was killing us. So I think we kind of feel like we have that one provision that allows us to do it. Some people, I've had one man who came in here wanted to take out these beautiful redwoods because it's impeding with his irrigation line. Well, you can move your irrigation line.
Yeah, I remember he came here. It was over on, if it's the same one.
Greenwood? I think
No,
he's- Oh, because
it was over off Bucknell somewhere,
Bicknell.
Bicknell. Buffalo, Bicknell.
So, he hasn't come back because I said he's, you know,
This
would
is a
need to.
different one.
So,
You probably just cut them down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
$100.
Property
So the
list
trees at Los Gas list with the addition of the pine.
with the addition of the pine.
Yeah.
so now there are lots of pines.
Yeah, but
There are Italian stone pines, which
Oh,
can
yeah,
be beautiful.
that's true.
There could be, you know, some
Ponderosa
canary
pine.
pines that are
Ponderosa,
beautiful.
yeah.
It's
Ponderosa pine are the ones.
Yeah,
that
the
are-
other
Monterey, I would say Monterey,
Monterey.
Also
Monterey
makes for
pine.
shady trim and-
I would almost say, I mean, I certainly know that I am not qualified to say what tree is.
I mean,
should
I
we
can
get
look
an
in and see
arborist?
what are the, because there have been, that said, you know, pines with the exception of the canary pines.
I think stone pines too.
Stone pines are, you know, in these large lots can be beautiful. They need to be growing in these open,
Right.
you
'cause
know,
they could all go like
unencumbered
that.
lots. You see them on school grounds. It's like, what were they thinking?
I know,
But they tend to grow
sideways.
sideways, and they get these huge limbs that
They're beautiful.
eventually
And he, yeah.
collapse.
How about if we have the
but
city
they're
arborist?
gorgeous. We don't have a city arborist.
Arborist?
She is the city arborist.
Oh,
Wait, let me get that other hat.
Yeah.
I thought we had an arborist. Los Gatos
you know, I
has
think-
an arborist.
Uh,
We don't have an arborist.
well,
just
I also
assumed
have
we
5
one.
planners too.
I know. Well, my point
So I think, I think the list of unsuitables, so the types of pine trees that I've seen in this, that people really want to take out are primarily the Monterey pines.
Yeah.
They're the ones that really got eaten by the beetles.
in the
And they
drought
usually
and-
have a 50 to 70 year
Yeah, and they
lifespan as
just
it
get
is.
nasty.
I don't see people coming in with stone pines. There was one property on, I think, Via Palomino that's got like this little stand of canary pines, and they're the ones that have more the, what I call the feathery
Yeah.
branches, and their needles are in little clumps. So I haven't, with the exception of that lot, if there are a lot of canary pines out there, I haven't seen people wanting to take them out. But I think at the minimum, Monterey pines. And I'll research to see if there's some other pine trees
Okay.
that we can add. But I think there's a lot of pine trees.
There's a
It's,
lot of, and a lot of them are really nice too.
Okay, so we've got our list of trees. We've got
We've
the
got-
dead, dying. Are we getting rid of the 3
Yes.
threshold?
I
Unsuitable.
think so, right?
The
That's,
3 trees or more?
yeah, just the fact that
Gonna-
there's no limit on size, it gets.
It's just arbitrary.
Yeah, it's an arbitrary 3.
yeah, it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense.
And we're going to work on or someone, the city arborist is going to work on the list of trees considered undesirable.
Yeah,
Pines, yeah.
And the increase in penalties.
so you really want it
Yes.
I
as
think
high
it
as
should
you
be
can go.
significant.
I do too, because I would just go,
Right, I would just cut it off on a
You
lot.
add
and say,
$100 or
yeah,
200,
especially
even a
builders.
home,
Yeah.
even a homeowner is like,
Yeah.
what the heck, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you also
now we're-
mentioned something about removal of stumps. I think
Well, that was when they said, you know, come back with some policy related to ensuring proper removal by professionals. Was it, do we require, I mean, there are some homeowners that can remove their trees. They've got the equipment or whatever. Or does it mean that it's done in a safe manner and the finished site is left, you know, we don't want to see a stump visible out of the ground.
Yeah, flush the ground maybe or something.
It's probably a lot to require full-out removal of the stump, because that's very expensive. So
Yeah.
most people,
Go down
if
to
they
the
even do
ground.
it, some don't even do it in the you know, wide-open lots.
Also could be serving lateral
Because,
support. For
yeah, you
Yeah,
know, they don't
that's
want to
why,
take
yeah.
the roots out, although once the tree's gone, those will eventually decompose and whatnot.
Right.
It still provides some soil stability. So I'm not, you know,
We just leave it alone.
Yeah, we
same
leave that
person who
alone.
directed us to do that was the one who thought that the appeal process wasn't clear.
Okay, well,
So,
No worries, we're good on that.
Well, I was just, there's a property above San Benito Way, Avenue in Los Gatos, where they took out like a gazillion eucalyptus.
One way up high.
Yeah, and they left all the stumps
all the stumps
there.
are up there, yeah.
It's just like, oh my
can leave
gosh,
it
what,
alone.
somebody came, It looks like,
And
like the place was
clear
clear cut, and it's.
So is it,
and
do
so
we
they
make
left
sure
it
that the
like
stump
that.
is down at grade level?
Grade level.
You
Yeah,
know,
grade
something like
level.
that, and then they can,
And if you're a homeowner
If it's
that
in the
wants to
front
chop
yard, if
trees
it's in their
down.
backyard, can't they just do what they want to? I mean, if it's not an eyesore for the
Yeah,
community.
there's that, right. I mean,
Then-
if it's just like, somebody has a giant piece of property and there's some tree out in the middle and they just want to leave the stump, no harm done. I mean, so it's, yeah. How do you,
Yeah.
codify that, right?
Seems like you shouldn't need a permit to cut down a fruit tree.
I believe that.
Because fruit trees generally die after about 30, 40 years anyway, and you get like some big gnarly apricot. Shouldn't that just be on our list that is exempt?
fruit or nut.
Although you've seen, there's some very old orange trees that can be really pretty, but
But
we're
who's
not,
taken out
that's
an
not in
orange
this
But if
tree?
it's
community,
not-
it's Southern
but-
California.
Yeah.
But if you're not
Well, I
taking
have
care of
one.
it, then
Yeah.
do you want to make
I'm
somebody else?
actually thinking of a tree in Southern California, so, yeah, I don't think that's an issue. Fruit trees should go.
Okay.
We don't like fruit.
We like fruit, but we
No,
don't
we don't
like
want to
fruit.
have
like in
to.
our grocery store.
Yeah.
How about, walnut is not a fruit tree, it's
I
a
wouldn't
nut.
do nut trees because I think
So
they're
just-
different.
Okay, so just fruit trees.
Because I think they have a longer lifespan, but I don't know.
Are we recorded right now?
Yes, this is the
Okay.
meeting.
Part of our meeting, okay.
Did you want to turn your mic off?
Questions, all of you later.
Okay, so we are not going to set a policy, or we are going to set a policy of.
Well, if we did, what do you think is worthy of including in it? And I think some of you have said, if we're dealing with, tree removal and there's stump that is
If it's visible.
visible
to
from
this-
the
visible to the
public or
street.
private
Yeah.
right-of-way,
Front
it
yard,
needs
yeah.
to be taken down to grade.
Plus
Yeah.
the grade, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and now we're at the clarify the appeal process, and that,
City
I-
council.
Yeah, that's more for us to just make sure there's nothing that's not clear, which I've read it and it's pretty clear. It's restated in the tree stuff as well as in the site permit, so I'll look at the two to make sure that it's internally consistent. But it's, I don't know, I think it's clear. Or if it isn't clear, I either took it from the site development permit, but I think it's straight, I don't have my
Do
ordinance
we
here.
have the appeal process in here?
It's, no, but it's,
Is it more than a paragraph?
it's already section 10.15.100. So the only thing, it's all laid out there and says, when they have to notice, the notice and time of hearing, information provided to council, the hearing itself, what's to happen after the hearing, and the findings that they need to make. So it's about almost a page of regulation that's already in there. So I just maybe clarified that any action taken by the Site and Architecture Commission may be appealed to the city council. So I don't know if so just throwing in Site and Architecture.
was there a
one.
specific item that the person thought
He
needed
just wanted it,
clarification?
it wasn't clear to him. So maybe that makes it clearer.
First
Even
go to
though
us, then go to them?
it did say any action taken by the commission. Well, yeah, no tree removal. Well, some might go to them first off, like if it was part of a project that had a variance or something like that. But so I don't know. I think what we'll do is kind of point out in the existing regulations, it is pretty straightforward, but by adding it, does that clarify what for their purposes? So.
Okay. So is there anything else we need to discuss about this?
Okay, so that'll help me. I think we're looking to take this to council, not as the public hearing yet, but we'll bring it back for the further discussion on
calendar?
November.
October 16th?
2 weeks?
Yeah. 2 weeks from yesterday. For further discussion under old business. So it's not going to be a public hearing yet. So after that, if we get consensus, we'll put it together in ordinance form. So may go sometime in November if they have any meetings, or December. Because I don't think they may not be holding a meeting the first Tuesday because that's election day. And then the next meeting would be the Tuesday before, during Thanksgiving week. So, not sure
Thanksgiving's
about
early
there.
this year, isn't it?
Okay,
Okay?
well, if
Okay.
there's
Okay.
no
Thank
further
you.
business, I'm closing the meeting. It's adjourned.